This video is going to be something a little different. It's a game smash, but not what you think. Maybe some goofiness here and there, but today it's a retrospective of why we're retro gamers, why we play retro games, why they're so nostalgic to us, and really why anybody can be a retro gamer, and why these games are actually still amazing to this day. And we're going to get into some very interesting things, like my absolute favorite handheld device is the Game Boy SP. And when it has one of my absolute favorite Game Boy's games of all time. And NES game too. Zelda 2, by far the best Zelda. And this little device, the Game Boy Color, was absolutely remarkable for the time. And Tetris is obviously in it. These games are absolutely great. We loved playing them as a kid, from the mid-80s all the way up till, I guess I should say, 99. These were the eras we're going to be talking about. Video stores used to rent games at arcades when they were a thing. Granted, arcades are starting to come back, which is absolutely great. But today, we enjoy these retro games very differently. We enjoy them on these devices. Now, this is an Amberneck 351V Elect. Absolutely great device. You can enjoy pretty much all your retro game collection right in the palm of your hand now. And it's absolutely amazing.
Retro gaming.
So first console.
So my first video game system was the Atari, and I remember this memory very vaguely. My Uncle Tony was one of the coolest uncles I had. He was really like a big child, I guess you could say. He always had remote control car stuff around the house, which was really cool. And I remember he gave me his Atari and a big bag of games when he got his NES, which was really cool. And it was really neat. Like, I remember getting Atari and having all these games and just going and just grabbing random games out of his bag and playing them. And it was so fun because there was so many great games. I remember for hours playing Missile Command. Wow. Like just hours and hours, and like River Raid, and these games were just such nostalgic. I still pop them in from now and time again and play them because they have such great memories and they bring back such great emotions you had when you were a kid of like what you did, like when you got out of school, you just like grab that cartridge, throw it in and start playing it. It was such a blast. And obviously this led to me eventually getting an NES for my birthday a couple years later, but at the time it was amazing.
So I had, growing up, I did have Atari, but it just didn't hit me like when the NES came. It was just a whole new world. I came home from school one day and I was like, where is everybody? Because, we had the living room. And then I go into my parents' bedroom, like, what's going on? And they're like, you gotta try this out. And I'm like, oh my God, what's this? I don't even think I knew about the NES when I was that age. And so that's when I started playing Mario, and I'm like, this is cool, So that's the memory I had for that, because like it was like just something brand new that I didn't even know really existed. And then as time progressed, we got more games, and like Super Mario 3 was like my favorite game on the Nintendo. And when I learned all the little secret whistles and stuff like that, it was just, I felt cool. And then it came out on one of my favorite movies from childhood, The Wizard.
I love the Power Glove. It's so bad.
I know it's just a big commercial for Nintendo, but there's something about that, and then the story about the kid trying with his twin sister that passed. Very sad, but it was, I don't know, I really enjoyed that movie. But yeah, NES, it was the beginning. It was just the beginning.
I wouldn't really call myself a retro gamer. I'm more of a nostalgia gamer because I play only the stuff I grew up on, unless I find a very rare or very new like translation of an old Japanese RPG. But the best thing I can come up with for my beginning would be NES and Final Fantasy, which kind of defined my gaming in general. I remember getting an NES after my friend Chad got one, and I used to watch him play through his bedroom window when his parents would make him go to bed. He would just like open up his window, we'd sit there and talk. It was great. And then I got mine, and the very first game I got was the Mario game that came with it, and I played that for like a week. It wasn't really my thing. But then a friend named Isaac gave me a game he said was trash. He's like, I don't play it, I don't want it, you can keep it. whatever. And he gave me Final Fantasy, and then I disappeared for like 2 months playing that game. And ever since then, I've been kind of like an addict for RPG games. But that's basically my origin. Final Fantasy is the reason why I'm a gamer, and that game specifically is the reason why I put so much time into gaming, which is why the Nintendo is like my favorite nostalgia system.
NES is by far one of my absolute all-time favorite systems and always will be. This was a system I remember I got for my birthday at a store that no longer exists actually in our town called Denny's. It was absolutely great. I got the one with the pad and Duck Hunt and everything. You got all that crazy stuff. So all 3 games, it was a whole lot of fun. But the biggest memory I have and one of the absolute funnest moments I can ever remember as a kid though is going to the video store. We had this place called Valley Video we used to go rent games at. And it was great because you could exchange code. People would like, oh, hey, here's a code for a game. You gotta try it. Especially like the Contra code. Everybody was like telling each other or whispering or giving notes at school. Hey, put this code in, you get 30 lives. I remember one day I went home sick from school. I had a cold and my mom felt bad for me because I had a wicked high fever. And I remember she went and rented a random game for me there was this place called Video Mania near the pharmacy. Right near, like it was cool because she went over there, grabbed a game and rented it for me. And this game happened to be Legend of Zelda. And till this day, I am absolutely one of the biggest Legend of Zelda fans like ever. Like absolutely love every single one of them. I've never stopped playing them. And it's all down to my mom getting that for me just when I was sick one day. Absolutely great. NES is by far one of the best systems ever made. I think always will be.
So when I was a kid, I didn't have a handheld console at the beginning, because I never got the Game Boy. But whenever we would go on like family trips, vacations, we would usually go to like New Hampshire or something. And I would always borrow my Game Boy from my uncle. And he only had a few games. Terminator, Tetris, and Super Mario Land. I don't think there was anything else. Either that or it was some forgettable game. And I hated all 3. Well, the Nintendo Land was good, but I was terrible at it. So I would just make it past the first level and die all the time. And then Tetris is Tetris. You just play it and play it and play it. And then Terminator was just awful. I couldn't get anywhere in that game. But I always, every year, I would borrow it from him just to have something to do with the back of the truck on the ride up there.
Game Boy was absolutely brilliant. One of the best handhelds ever made. Yes, there was Game Gear, and they were the direct competitor, and it had color and all these neat things. And I remember I had one friend who had one. For me, it just wasn't enjoyable, and it was very clunky compared to like the Game Boy, the DMG Game Boy that is. It seemed clunky to me, even though today's standards, the DMG Game Boy is clunky, I guess you could say. But when you first got that Game Boy, it was really cool. I remember it was just a lot of fun because you could have this handheld with you that you could bring with you and play anywhere. And for me, it was like if my mom had a doctor's appointment or something like that because I had to go with her or something, or an appointment or something, and I had to sit there and wait, I'd have my Game Boy with me and it would really keep me occupied. And it was a whole lot of fun. There was so many absolutely great games on that system. But obviously, the one memory all of us have is just playing Tetris for like hours. And then there was the Game Boy Color, which got, I mean, for me, a lot of people into the Pokemon series, the red and blue. And I have an absolutely great memory because I was actually a cook at a restaurant. And I used to challenge the dishwasher to Poke Battles with a link cable on breaks, and it was a lot of fun. And I used to kick the crap out of them because I was like a little overpowered because I had Mewtwo, because I already played through the whole game and stuff. Absolutely, some of the best handhelds you will ever find are the Game Boy handhelds, the originals that are in the Game Boy Color.
Game Gear I actually got one year. I don't know if it was for my birthday or for Christmas, and I loved the Game Gear. I liked it more than the Game Boy. Like, I know there was battery issues, but I don't recall it. Probably because I always had plugged it into a wall. I had Sonic 2. I had a baseball game that I mastered because, like, you could control the pitch, so I was always throwing strikes and they couldn't hit the ball. And then I'd be like hitting home runs. I would beat them like 45-0. And I had a handful of other games. I think I had Aladdin too, and I had the box with the screen make it bigger thing, but I really enjoyed the Game Gear. There used to be this store called Ames back in the day, and they were closing. They had a big closing sale, and I bought like 10 or 15 Game Gear games. I get home, the receipt was like this long, and a few of the games weren't even in the box, and I was pissed. I was like, oh no, how did I not look? But yeah, that sucked. One of them was DuckTales, and I was excited to play that game, but it didn't happen. Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis.
So after my crippling addiction to RPGs on NES, I needed to find a better fix, which is where the Super Nintendo and the Genesis came in. And the only games I ever bought for these systems are RPGs. So we're talking Phantasy Star 2, 3, 4, the Lunar games on the Sega CD, Dragon Quest games on Super Nintendo, Secret of Mana games. And basically, that was my entire life of video gaming, spending entire weekends playing Super Nintendo RPGs and Sega Genesis RPGs. And I remember one in particular point where I had a copy of Secret of Mana. Me and my friend Nate, who you just saw on video, rented it with money we saved up from doing like a lemonade stand or something. And he stayed over my house from Friday till Sunday night playing this thing, and we played it non-stop. Got to the end and couldn't beat it because we weren't strong enough, so we had to call the hotline. The guy's like, you're like 10 levels behind, you can't beat Thanos like this. So we went back through, played the whole thing again, and then beat it. And it's basically the only memory I have left of Super Nintendo because it's my most important one. I played this game with pretty much my only good friend at the time. And yeah, Secret of Mana. Best goddamn game ever made, in my opinion.
Super Nintendo I actually got for Christmas. It was one of the family gifts, and the games I got was Super Mario World, NBA Jam, and I think Mario Paint and F-Zero.
Oh,
and then I found out that like everything but Super Mario World they rented. So I was like, oh, okay. I played the hell out of NBA Jam. I freaking love that game. We play it to this day whenever we go on a convention trips. I always compete with Nate and I always kick his ass. But
who doesn't?
But yeah, NBA Jam was my favorite. I played that so much that at the time the president was Clinton, and while I was playing it, I saw on the news that Al Gore like pulled his hamstring or something like that, or broke his leg, and I'm like, oh shit, I broke his leg. I played him in the game too much, because there was a cheat code where you could actually play as Al Gore in NBA Jam. But one of my big memories is, so my family liked playing video games once in a while. And it wasn't like, ooh, video games. They played with us. So every Friday night before TGIF, we would play games like, some people hate it, but because of it was like a family thing and we took turns and stuff, we played Bubsy and Donkey Kong Country. And we played the hell out of those like every Friday night, me and my mom and my aunt, my sister. And it was like a family thing playing games, and that's probably why I enjoy playing games with people more than anything.
Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo, both super iconic systems at the time, and everybody remembers it was like a war. The war to end all wars at the time, but it was all really good fun, and we all remember the blast processing commercials. Absolutely such a great time. I remember I had the Genesis at the first, and eventually years later I got a Super Nintendo. Now, absolutely some of the most iconic games obviously on Genesis was Sonic. Everybody loves Sonic. It was great at the time, and it was fast, obviously, and it was one of the best rivals to Mario, which we all played prior to that. And I remember playing Sega for years, especially like Streets of Rage. Like, I still absolutely love that series till this day, and obviously we have a new one that just recently came out, Streets of Rage 4, which is just as good. But I still play the classics to this day. Streets of Rage 1 and 2 mostly. 3 was, it was okay. But we get into Super Nintendo though. Super Nintendo was the RPG machine, really. That's what I really remember, and adventure RPGs. And I get into Zelda again, because Zelda Link to the Past was one of the games I played more than probably any game when I was younger. I played through that game so many times, and I still play through it with a randomizer. And I still remember the day, because it was a rainy day. I went to Walmart to get it, and then my family, on the way home, we got to this place called Hoptown Pizza that was right in one of the little local towns, and it was just awesome, because I remember that evening, because it was a weekend, I didn't have school, and I could sit there and play this new Zelda game. Like, holy crap, a new Zelda game, and eat pizza and enjoy this game. It was a night to remember, and like, it's really something nostalgic about that game. Those memories still come back every time I play it. And Super Nintendo will always be one of the best systems that I think has ever been made till this day. There are a lot of great systems out there, but Super Nintendo had such a library that is beyond iconic.
Sega. So Sega was the first system that I bought because I was working at a very young age, and I wanted, like, that's when I had to start fending for myself, you know, when I was young. So I've got Sega, and I used to play a game at my friend's house, Aladdin, and even though it was a Disney game, Aladdin was really freaking good. It's one of my favorite games on the Sega. My friend also had Sonic Spinball. It's okay, really hard. It was very difficult. I bought Sega because I wanted to try something different after playing, you know, Super Nintendo and stuff. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna buy it so I can see what else is out there, because I didn't know much about Sega, because all I knew was Sega did what Nintendo don't.
Now, the era of PlayStation, and then we got into 64 as well. PlayStation was, holy crap, that was a system, like, so iconic. I remember I had my first job during the time, right? And it was one of the times, like, when your parents were finally like, hey, you're buying your own shit from now on. So, that's what I had to do. And I saved up money, got a PlayStation, and enough to buy Final Fantasy VII, okay? Because this was like mind-blowing at the time. Final Fantasy in 3D, it was just, especially after being such a fan of Final Fantasy and seeing that trailer, holy crap. So I put all my money in getting both of those. The one thing I forgot, or didn't have the money for, I didn't think of, I guess you could say, a memory card.
The infamous memory card incident.
I remember, because I had to do side jobs because I couldn't wait a week to get a memory card. I remember playing Final Fantasy, leaving my PlayStation on for 2 days straight just to get enough money to go to the store and pick up a memory card and pop it in and save it. It was just one of those moments I'll never forget.
Nate mentioned part of this. So just like him, I rushed out. I didn't have to buy mine because it was close to Christmas when I finally got mine. I think I got mine sooner than you, because I got mine on Christmas. My mother bought this thing for me when it was very hard to get, so praise her for that shit. And I got Final Fantasy the day it came out, and I didn't have a memory card either. And the reason why we call this the infamous memory card incident is because we played through at Nate's house with our friend Chad up to the point where, spoiler alert, Aerith is killed. And then in some twist of stupidity or underleveling, because we were enjoying the game so much we didn't pay attention to all this micromanagement shit, we got killed by Genova and didn't have a save. So we couldn't swap disk or anything. We had to just start over from the beginning. And what made it funny is that we fucking did. We started over that day and played through the whole thing again. One of my favorite things that I remember from PlayStation era is Chrono Cross. And a lot of people dislike Chrono Cross, but I came at it as not a sequel, because it wasn't really connected in some ways. And the thing I remember about Chrono Cross the most is that's what got me, that and an ex-girlfriend, is what got me into collecting RPG music and listening to it, because I had the entire Chrono Cross music. I still listen to it to this day. I think Chrono Cross is probably the best soundtrack, period. So I just kind of wanted to throw that in when it comes to retro gaming. Like, sometimes it's not that I
don't want to sound weak and pathetic here.
but if I listen to Chrono Cross, I can get real nostalgic about when I was a kid, because that music is almost defines that era of gaming to me. I can immediately snap into my nostalgia mode when I hear Dreams of Another Shore, like Star Stealing Girl.
PlayStation is another system that I saved up for and bought with my own money, but I didn't really have a game in mind that I wanted to play because I wasn't a big fan of the main PlayStation mascot guy there. The hell's his name?
Crash Bandicoot.
There you go. I just did not.
One is better than you.
Excuse me. My heart is you are so totally whipped.
Did not like him. I did not like.
Best commercials ever.
Yeah, no, they were good. I was not into them. That's when I kind of got into sports games. My favorite game on the PlayStation 1 is called Grind Session. And that was a skateboard game like Tony Hawk, but it was the first one that I played. And I played the demo to that to where I couldn't play the demo anymore. I got such a high score, and I played the hell out of it, and then I finally got the game. But the only game that I got when I got it was like Jet Moto and a demo disc. PlayStation was okay. It wasn't like my big thing, but I can tell you one thing. I had a memory card.
Nintendo 64 was a system that I actually didn't pay for myself. My dad actually got for my birthday, really because he knew I was into gaming, and he was just like, that would be a cool gift, which was awesome. And I got Mortal Kombat Ultimate with it, and obviously Mario came with it as well. And it was absolutely one of the best systems, and 64 was great, but the one thing I can think of when I think of the 64 is community, because we used to gather, because we were all like older teenagers and stuff at the time, we would gather at Grimm's house and we would play GoldenEye for hours and hours, to the point where like we were just like, oh, who wants food? And me and a friend of ours would go to Burger King or wherever and just pick up loads of food, like fast food. Wasn't great food for us, but we had loads of fun on the weekend, just hours and hours, to the point where we had a tournament. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, 64, super iconic and super communal.
This one kind of hits a soft spot. The N64 was, as Nate mentioned in his previous clips, was the party system to us. We used to get together and play No Mercy, Mario Kart, GoldenEye, and we would do this every weekend. We used to have a chart, and we would put money into a chart, and people who won with the most kills at the end of like a week would get the money, and they'd usually just spend it on nefarious means, stuff like that. But the thing that kind of always comes back to me with the N64 is my late friend Cap Kenyon, who passed away about a year ago. A little more than that, but I really don't know how he died. We hadn't talked to each other in a very long time, but he used to love playing GoldenEye, and this dude would literally drive all the way down to Hope Valley if Nate couldn't get here, or Chad, or any of the other people I play these games, and he would pick them up and bring them up to my house, and we'd play GoldenEye for hours on end. And he used to always be like, he was not very good, but when he got a kill, you knew it was him. Not because the game told you he killed you, but because he'd be like, Cat Kenyon with the Cougar Magnum from like a mile away, because he sucked, so all he did was use the Cougar Magnum. And it was a one-hit kill, so he'd come around the corner and just blow your head off from like a mile out and be like, oh, with the Cougar Magnum, with that hard Boston accent that he had. So like, I tend to not think about my N64 era because it makes me sad. You know, on a somber note, you should probably, don't lose touch with your friends, dude. Like, seriously. Because I lost touch with Cap, and I hadn't talked to him in many years. I saw him every now and then and said hi to him, and then out of the blue, someone tells me he's dead, and it really punched me in the gut, you know?
Nintendo 64. I didn't personally have Nintendo 64. I really wanted it. I played it at a friend's house, and I played Wave Race, and I don't know why, but I loved that game. It was so fun. The physics and the graphics at the time were mind-blowing. Well, then my mom met a guy, and he had one. he had a Nintendo 64, and I'd get so excited to go. He lived far away too, so we'd always have to travel. But I would play Nintendo 64 at his house, and he had, you know, Super Mario World. Was it Super Mario 64, which is up there, and it was fantastic. It was like the 3D thing was like so new at the time, and even though today with today's controls, it's like difficult to play with the C-stick thing, but it was just a whole new thing. I loved Mario 64. Most of the funny thing is, like, most of the systems that I've talked about are like release games and stuff like that. It's not about the other games. It's just I always started off because most systems came with the game at the time. Then in the future they just didn't. You don't see the jump in graphics as much these days with consoles. When you went from the Nintendo to the Super Nintendo, and then you go to the Nintendo 64, it was like night and day. Now, when you go from like the PlayStation 3 to the PlayStation 4 to the PlayStation 5, it's incremental. It's not like boom, like it used to be.
All right, well, so with that, I guess what I could leave you with is I've got so many more stories I could tell about old games, but again, I'm not a retro gamer, I'm a nostalgia gamer. Like, every one of these games that I have in my head means something to me on a personal level. So like when I play Dragon Quest VIII, I remember certain people in my life around that time that I no longer see or talk to. When I play the Lunar games, which are some of my favorite games, I remember when me and my friend Eric were good friends, and before we kind of separated and stopped being friends. I remember that stuff. That's what retro gaming really is to me. It's not about playing old games because, you know, people do that. They have their own thing. They go out and chase scores and do whatever. I play these old games to help let me remember the great times when I was a young kid.
Just like Grim said, it's more about like a nostalgia thing. So, you know, when I play these games, when I'm going through a rough time, stressed out, I play these games to remind me of a better time when I wasn't stressed out, to get that feeling when I was like a kid again. Because, you know, life's rough, and you need to be able to push things aside to clear your mind. And that's when I go to these games, just to play the games to get that feeling again where I don't have to worry all the time.
Now, that was some of the best moments that I just talked about of my past. There's thousands more, but those are some of the most iconic that stand out to me. And obviously, to this day, I still retro game all the time. And I do have a CRT sitting on my desk with a retro trio. If anybody doesn't know what that is, it was kind of the competitor to the Retron 5. Except the difference is it's an FPGA, so it actually uses real hardware to play the games, not emulation. So absolutely one of the best things. And I have my own collection, which I'm very much hoping to add to, coming on November 6th and 7th, which Retro World Expo, which is happening. It's going to be absolutely great. We didn't get to go to last year, and we're going to get to meet a lot of friends we haven't seen in a little while. One of the best conventions, and it's going to be retro nostalgia all over the place. So we hope you've enjoyed this look back retrospect at retro gaming. One of the best times that I think there was in my own life personally, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way, it was a great time. It was when Nintendo came out and kind of refueled the video game era after Atari pretty much destroyed it, in America anyway. To the point where it had to make it look like a VCR. So yeah, that says a lot. You have to redesign a console just to make it look like different so you get sales. Absolutely great time. One of the best times. And in future videos, we are going to cover video game systems like the PlayStation 2 and the Sega Dreamcast, the Sega Saturn. These other very iconic systems that came out and were around and were great systems in their own right, including the 32X, which has its own piece of history. So, hope you enjoyed this. We'll get into a lot more retro gaming in the future. And we are going to be doing future Game Smashes where we're going to review some very interesting games. We have plenty of ideas. So we hope you enjoyed those in the past, because we have some things up our sleeve. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for the next Game Smash and future videos. And we'll see everybody who's going to be at Retro World Expo on the 6th and 7th.